No fences, no guard tower, or, no cottages, so nothing. Nothing looks familiar. No front gate. Doesn't leave anything.
Art Shibayama was just 13 years old and living comfortably in Peru when he was forced out of the only home he had ever known. During World War II, the United States government, in collaboration with several Latin American countries, orchestrated the forced removal and internment of over 2,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, which included both citizens of 13 Latin American countries as well as Japanese immigrants. Like young Art Shibayama, the vast majority were Japanese Peruvians. Half a century later, Art retraces their journey and uncovers their hidden history.
My grandparents had a department store where they sold clothing and jewelry and things like that.
Like Art's grandparents, more and more first-generation immigrants, or Issei, began to find success in a variety of commercial ventures. As these early pioneers quickly became settlers, they set about to establish roots and raise families in their new homeland. By the 1930s, as the world was entering into a global depression, there were well over 20,000 persons of Japanese ancestry living in Peru. Unfortunately, troubling times were just around the corner. With worsening global economic conditions, the more successful members of the Japanese Peruvian community were soon regarded by many in Peru as unfair economic competition.
I remember on December 7th, 1941, my father went to play tennis, and he came right back and told us, hey, war started. And then he said, well, I guess we're going to have a tough time because I know Peru is going to go with the United States. I remember that.
Shortly after the Japanese military attack on Pearl Harbor, community leaders were scapegoated and rounded up for detention throughout the Americas. In Peru, a blacklist had been generated. While not based on any real or credible evidence of Japanese subversive activity, the blacklist targeted businessmen, community leaders, and educators. In collaboration with Peruvian officials, the U.S. used the blacklist as the basis for rounding up hostages. These hostages were then to be traded for Americans held by Japan. In addition to a convenient means of expelling the economic competition, Peru had much to gain in its relationship with the United States.
The United States lends Peru $25 million and signs a reciprocal trade agreement. Peru will receive American arms under a Lend-Lease agreement.
With Peru's full cooperation, the kidnappings began.
Every time a U.S. transport came into the Port of Callao, words got around and people, the head of the families, went into hiding. My father included. When the police came to our house several times looking for him, and the last time, again, not finding him, they took my mother and put her in jail. My sister, who was 11 at the time, went with her because she didn't want our mother to go by herself. You know, as soon as my father found out about it, he came out. He gave himself up.
Aboard U.S. Army transports, they were taken. For weeks, Art was stuck below deck, shipped off with his family to an unknown destination and an uncertain future.
After 21 days, we arrived in New Orleans, and the women and children were let off the ship first and marched to a warehouse, and they were ordered to strip and stand in line naked. My sister, who was 11 at that time, said that she never felt so humiliated that she had to strip in front of boys.
We got off the ship, they put us in a big room like a warehouse, and everybody has to take their clothes off, you know. So we were all naked, and they started spraying us with something.
They shot DDT on your head, your arm, and, you know, the vitals.
It took us 2 days, 2 nights from New Orleans to Crystal City. And during that time, we had to keep the shades down.
Most of the Japanese Latin Americans were interned in a Department of Justice camp at Crystal City, Texas. A 10-foot fence, guard towers, and floodlights surrounded this camp,